Hello, and welcome to another episode of Discussing Diabetes Basics. Today, we are talking about how we each fit diabetes management in our given cultures. So, if you're wondering, when you get those pamphlets on how to manage diabetes, like how do I fit this in my culture? How do I manage diabetes during Ramadan, during Carnival? How do I do this with the Southern diet, with the Cuban diet? We're going to answer those questions. So I have three lovely guests today, all who are managing diabetes within their various cultural spaces, and they're going to talk about it.
Hello, everyone. I'm so honored to be a part of this series. Nice to see you, ladies, and nice to meet you guys out there in the cyber world. My name is Kim. I am from Trinidad and Tobago. That is in the Caribbean. If you don't know where it is, it's not Jamaica. It's a different country. I have had diabetes for 26 years. It's been the better part of my life.
Hello everyone, I'm Sana. I'm from Pakistan and I have had diabetes for 23 years now. So it's midnight here, and if I sound too off or sleepy or anything, please forgive me. I'll try my best to answer all the questions that you may have, which are very natural because knowing that coming from a different culture and all the materials being designed for a certain type of culture, it's never easy.
Hi, my name is Sanadu. I live in Gainesville, Florida, but my parents are Cuban. I have had diabetes for 18 years now, and I'm also here to be open to talk about anything and everything dealing with how it is to be diagnosed with diabetes when you're not from like a typical American culture, essentially.
Okay, awesome. So you all are making my decade seem like nothing. I'm the newbie, which is 10 years. So I want you to think about someone watching our video or listening who is newly diagnosed with diabetes, and they get that pamphlet on like how to manage diabetes, but they're from home, like your home and whatever that means. And they're wondering, how do I manage diabetes with this? What would you say to them?
I think that for me, the resounding message would always be that you have to try. It's all about, for me, trial and error with diabetes. To this day, to this very day, I don't have it down to science, and you're not always going to have the ideal blood sugars. I don't think any diabetic ever does. And so it's going to be about trial and error. It's all well and good that you may have been given guidelines, but everybody's different. Everybody's anatomy is different. We all react to things differently. And so don't be afraid to try things for it to not work, because then you'll know what not to do in the next instance.
I guess so many parts of our culture have things that do not really fit into our diabetes management routine. For example, for us, people from Pakistan, either rice or bread is something that's just has to be there in the food. It's like it forms 80% of your meal. And how to actually think about this, that you have to squeeze this down to 1/3 of your plate, that seems undoable most of the time. So it does become a struggle, specifically in the beginning when you are just trying to understand how carbs affect your blood sugar levels. But as Kim said, it's a lot of trial and error.
So I would agree with what you both said. But one thing that I would also add to that is find community with people who are like you, I guess, like maybe culturally or even just people who have some of your same interests, because I think that's really helpful in creating community and being able to ask questions where you can't really ask your doctor, you feel like a little shy to ask your doctor, or you know you're going to go somewhere that there's going to be a lot of carbs, but you're freaking out. Sometimes you can ask people those questions of like, okay, what did you do, or what worked out for you? So I think community is definitely one of those big things that doesn't often get talked about with diabetes, especially when you're first diagnosed, but I think it's really, really important.
I think every day is a trial and error. And then thinking about the rice and the bread, like as a Black American from the South, and also like South Carolina has a very unique Gullah Geechee culture. Like we too, right? Like I can't even imagine when people say I don't eat rice, I think like what's wrong with you? Like there is no way I'm gonna survive without eating rice. I've learned the art of long chewing when I'm at family gatherings around people. They'll be like, you're not eating, eat more, right? As soon as you clean that plate, people are shoving more on it. And so just thinking about eating less and watching your carb intake. But there are things like for me as a Black American Southerner, I have to have grits. Like it is a staple item. And so grits is like it's a grain and it has carbs in it. I have to have that. So I had to figure out how to put that in my carb count. So is there anything that is sacred to you in your diet that you were like, I have to figure this out, even though when I was diagnosed or I went to see a diabetes educator, they didn't tell me how to do it. I have to figure it out. Anything like that for you?
For me, for sure. In Trinidad, we have so many cultural customs and norms and just things that are just ingrained in us. And one of those things is roti. And one of those things is doubles. I don't know. I know you guys might be more familiar with roti than doubles, but they're in the same sort of family, and it's the flour family. It's just flour. It's literally flour, white flour, and but it's literally the most delicious thing you would ever. Before you die, get roti or doubles. And so for me, I know that I have to pre-plan when I'm having roti. I can't just off on a whim just decide, oh yeah, boy, feeling for roti today. You know what I mean? So I would pre-plan for it. So if I'm gonna say I'm gonna have it next week Saturday, I'm gonna have it tomorrow or whatever it is, I know what I need to do beforehand. So I know that I either need to kind of work out, start with my blood sugar at a lower level so that by the time I have the roti, you know, it kind of balances out. I also need to pre-bolus, take something before I start to eat the roti, maybe like a 15 to 20 minutes before I start to eat it, so that the insulin is already in my system working before I start to consume it. So as I said, it's literally trial and error and seeing what works for you.
So Kim, when you mentioned roti, I mean, is this like the thin bread made out of white flour?
Yes.
Hey, we have the same, and we also call it roti. So I was just wondering if it's the same thing. And that's our everyday meal. I mean, no meal can be without either roti or rice, which are both high carb. And so that's the daily planning for us. And in the beginning, when I was diagnosed, I was handed over this chart which had 3 things in it. There was the things that people with diabetes can eat. There are things that people with diabetes should eat with caution, and there are things that people with diabetes should not eat at all. And the things that people with diabetes can eat were only the green vegetables. That was it. So, and I was like wondering, how on earth can I have a meal without roti? Or how on earth can I have a meal without rice? But as Kim said, there are things that you need to pre-plan. So that becomes part of our daily routine.
So for me, which I also agree that I don't think that there's anything off limits. Like I think you could always work anything into your diet. Growing up Cuban and in Miami, it's actually like 4 things technically, but it's Cuban coffee, which is super, super sweet. Pastelitos and croquetas, which are just like pastries essentially, and Cuban bread, which it's all kind of breakfast items, which sometimes sucks just because I think in the morning, my blood sugars tend to be a little bit more stubborn and a little bit higher. But honestly, I will always work those in. And every time I go back to Miami, that's what I'm having at least once, usually about like 4 or 5 times. I do the same. I pre-bolus, or I'll try to make sure that I'm exercising pretty good the week so my blood sugars are a little bit more stable.
What I want to ask you about now is festivals and celebrations. So things that in your family, your culture, that you have to participate in that may sometimes affect how you manage diabetes.
Well, as you rightly said, Trinidad and Tobago is the home of Carnival. It is the most magnificent show on earth. And again, just like Roti, if you've never experienced it before you die, try to. So with that out of the door, Carnival is a sacred time for me, especially. I think that I'm a Carnival baby. They call Carnival babies babies who were conceived around Carnival time. And Carnival is a parade. So in Trinidad, it starts way before the 2 days on the road, which is we have fetes and parties and all inclusives, and all these all inclusives have all this food and all these drinks, and it is the most amazing time, but it is a very challenging time for a diabetic, especially if you're a new diabetic. My thoughts and my advice around that whole time and preparing for that whole time is just to understand food and what it does to your body. So in preparing for these types of events, for instance, if you want to go to an all-inclusive, which includes all-inclusive meaning all of your drinks are included, champagne, wine, vodka, rum, anything you could think of is included, food is included. And so just understanding, one, what different types of food does to your body. Two, perhaps, as we spoke about earlier, preparation, so your pre-bolusing and that type of thing. And then three, just understanding that you are not limited, as Sana mentioned, but it's just about understanding in life, everything is about having fun in moderation, right?
Okay, so for us, the greatest festival is Eid, which comes right after Ramadan, and then there are 2 Eids in the year, and the other one comes another time of the year. So the Eid that comes right after Ramadan, and it's Ramadan these days here as well. So that's called the sweet Eid or the meaty Eid. So many people might recognize the word. And it's all about sweets. It's like the staple. You start your day with sweet vermicelli. And it's like cooked in milk and has a lot of sugar and dates in it. And so that was the hard for me in the initial years. That was the hardest part, how to actually handle that kind of sweet. And you get it throughout the day. So for example, of course, you'll be visiting your friends and your family members, and every home that you go to, you will be served with the same sweet or with a different kind of sweet. And you're taking it again and again and again, and it does become a challenge at times to actually balance it out. I think the first 2 or 3 Eids were pretty hard on that, but then I learned how to give myself small boluses to cover that up. So throughout the day, I'll be monitoring my blood sugar levels more as compared to on a normal day, and also trying to understand how much a bowl of, let's say, that sheer, that sweet that I'm talking about, affects my blood sugar levels, and keep giving myself small boluses, let's say 1 unit or 2 units, depending on how much I had eaten, to cover that up.
And if there's one more thing I want to say to you, like, I know we're currently in Ramadan right now. What about iftar, like the daily iftar? How challenging is that, or was that, or could it be for someone having their first iftar during Ramadan?
I think both in the challenge of iftar, which is of course related to how you cup count and how you bolus for it. The bigger challenge is probably at times not being able to fast and not being able to indulge in the culture of Ramadan, because we all want to be a part of that. You really feel left out. So for example, if you are living in America, where there are a lot of people from different religions around you, and not everyone might be fasting, so you might not actually feel that left out. But if you're living in a country where there is an 80, 90, maybe 100% population of Muslims around you, and all of them are fasting, it gets very hard to feel that sense of isolation, that you're actually not a part of that. So in the beginning, I was very determined to fast, and it was not easy. I must admit, it was not easy. But now what I do is that I fast off and on. So I can maybe fast a day and then give a break for 2 days and fast again, so that I don't feel completely left out, and it's not too much for my body to handle as well. So about iftar, iftar has a lot of fried items. Generally speaking, in our cultures, there are these pakoras and samosas, which are all deep fried. And what do they do is that, because they're carbs and deep fried as well, they give you a rice, and then that rice goes on for a long time, because the fat takes a lot of time to digest. So you might be actually high for a number of hours. So what I do with that is I split my iftar into 2 parts. So I take one snack at the time of iftar, and then give myself an hour or an hour and a half's break, and then take another thing after that. Or I take split bolus. So I would take one bolus right before iftar and give myself a 2 hours break, and then bolus again for the fats that would be kicking in now to keep me for a long time. But yes, I do eat a pakora or 2 or 3 pakoras at every iftar. That's a must. I can't go without that. I think also a lot what matters is how you start your iftar, because at times when you're empty stomach and you just overload yourself with a lot of carbs right away, that gives you a sudden rise. So at times you can maybe start your iftar with some sort of low carb snack to fill yourself up a little bit, and then indulge into the high carb or the high fat things. So the release of blood sugars is slowed down a little bit. It does work out after 4 or 5 iftars. If you just try to manage your insulin doses and your timings, you'll start seeing how your patterns are working, and you'll start managing it better and better with time.
I feel like Cuban culture doesn't really have any crazy festivals, but I would say every time we have a party, it is a little crazy. Cuban food is definitely heavy carb, rice, beans, there's pork. Usually there's a thing called cajachina, which is like a whole pork that is grilled, I guess, underground. I don't know if grill is the right word, but and then there's like the skin of the pork that's really crispy and like delicious. There's plantains and cake and pastelitos and croquetas and all that. So I usually prepare by doing the same thing that was mentioned, like taking my insulin before, making sure that if I'm drinking alcohol, I'm kind of eyeing my blood sugars, because alcohol definitely lowers my blood sugar like way after. So I have to like keep an eye on that. But one thing I kind of wanted to mention, which is not, I guess, preparing body wise, but I think mental health wise, because Cuban culture is very like, oh, you have diabetes, you shouldn't be eating that. Because they don't really understand all the little things that we have to learn. Like, we know our diabetes very well, but I don't think family always does. So I think sometimes I kind of have to prepare for people telling me like, oh, you're eating rice and beans. Should you be eating that? How's your blood sugar? And I have to kind of be like an educator to my family. And like, it's every single time that I go, it's the same thing. And sometimes I'm just like, you're going to say what you're going to say, and this is okay. And I just need to deal with it, and it's cool.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have come to the end, and I'd like to end with you saying 2 things. One, last words for someone who is watching this, who or listening, who may be newly diagnosed, or maybe they have not participated in something that's important to them. Maybe they have taken a food item that is important to them off the table and they want to do it now, right? So what would you say to that person, real brief, and then tell us where we can find you. So if someone is watching this or listening and they're like, okay, I want to follow her.
My advice or just my guidance would be nothing is off limits, everything in moderation. That's literally what I would be the resounding message for me, because you just have to understand your own body. You're never going to get it 100% right all the time. So don't be afraid to experiment and to figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. You can find me on Instagram. I'm Kim, the type 1 diabetic over there.
Okay, so I would just echo what Kim has said. Nothing is off limits. Everything is in moderation. Checking is very important, and keeping records, keeping logbooks maybe, or if you have a CGM, looking at your data and trying to understand what food has affected your body in what way, and next time trying to improve that trend is very important. I think one thing that I would really want to mention here for anyone who's newly diagnosed is believe in yourself, because at times when it happens, the first thing that really hits you is that probably, okay, have I done something wrong that this has happened to me? Or there's a lot of pity around, as Sanadu was mentioning about the question about what you can eat or what you can't eat. And in our culture, there's a lot of pity involved in it also comes from people around you, and then you also start pitying yourself. Don't do that. Believe in yourself, because there's nothing off limits for you, whether it's in terms of your food or it's in terms of what you can achieve in your life. Sky's the limit. And you can find me on Facebook. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm probably a bit of an oldie for Insta. My name, you can find me through my name, Sana Ajmal, or you can follow Meet in the Ghee. We have support groups for people with diabetes, for every type of diabetes, and not just type 1.
I'm echoing exactly what both of them said, and kind of adding, don't give up, especially on yourself. It's hard, and I think that sometimes it seems really easy, especially once you're doing it for years. You're just like, wow, this is just life. But in the beginning, it's very hard, and there's going to be times where you're just going to be like, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't understand. Just don't give up. Like, literally, you will figure it out. Your numbers are very important. Like, sometimes you might not want to check your blood sugar, but check it, trust me, because knowing your numbers is probably like the most important thing for being healthy, or knowing what you can eat and what you shouldn't eat. And even if your numbers are high and you want to eat something, just do it too. Like, you're going to have days where your numbers are going to be high the whole time. So yeah. And my Instagram, well, you can find me on Instagram, which is The Curly Diabetic. I'm also on YouTube at The Curly Diabetic as well.
Okay, thank you. So that is a wrap. And of course, I always say, diagnose, not defeated. Thank you very much for tuning in to Discussing Diabetes Basics. We hope this episode has been helpful to you.